Who are the ultimate middle forwards in fantasy, and who should you pick up this year? If you take them from this list, you should do all right. Biz, welcome back. Excited to talk middle forwards, mate?
Always, mate. It's middle of the night here in New York, but the best week of trials is about to come, and preseason is not far away. So this is as good as it gets.
Mate, pumped as we've got team lists to work with as well. So we're in a good spot here. I'm going to jump right on here. And look, we're both going to talk about this guy here, but it's Terrell May, Andrew Fafita 2.0 in my mind for fantasy. I'm going to throw a few numbers at you, and then you can just jump in with what you're thinking here too. He is priced at a 50 average, which is not cheap, but his average in 30 plus minutes last year was 56 points, and his average in 40 plus minutes last year was 64 points. Now, these averages, so 56, that was in an average of 49 minutes, and 64 was an average of 55 minutes. So we're looking at that 56 to 64 average in sort of 49 to 55 minutes, which is roughly where I see him ending up. So I think we've got a guy who could be around that 60 average point, which would be absolutely massive for 670K.
Yeah, I think he could be close to the best prop this year. I think he's also shown the ability to play big minutes.
Oh,
During the
yeah.
bye season last year, he played 80 minutes. I was actually just in the middle of pulling up his score when he played 80 minutes last year, which was something ridiculous. And I think
It was a
he scored
90.
95 when he played 75 minutes and
Oh,
84 in 80 minutes.
yeah.
So if he gets big, and he scored tries in both those games, he's a guy that doesn't really like. I've seen some players talking about his Roosters team at last year, like Spencer Leniu, when their minutes kind of increase, their PPM falls. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen with Terrell. It just continues to go.
Mm.
So I think he could be. I think Clemmer now leaving the Tigers opens up even more minutes for him.
Mm.
They've gone out and got him. So yeah, I think he's going to be 55 to 60 minutes for 60 plus average this year. Get him in your team. Don't ask more questions.
Yep, he's that forward leader. He's a bit of a pod captain at some point, I reckon, this year too. Not round
Mm.
one, but as we go along, if he's looking like a 60-minute guy, I'll be definitely looking at him as a captain. I'll throw to you, man. Your number 2 spot. Who are you throwing in here?
Yeah, I've got Payne Haas here. Now, I think, look, 2 and 3 for me, Haas and Yo have the same purpose. Well, I'll let you talk about Yo, but I like Haas. I think new coach. I think Maguire will bring out the best in Payne.
Mhm.
He's. I don't even know. Like, has he entered his prime? Like he's still so young, but he's been in his prime since he came onto the scene. So I don't really know if he's been getting better because he was so good when he
Yeah.
came on. Like he had an incredible rookie season. So I don't really know if there's much more improvement based on how good he is already. But
Mm.
look, he's a reliable 65-point guy. He's a captain option every week, and he's a guy that just stats aside, he just seems to do really well for me whenever he's in my team.
Yeah.
And yeah, he picks up niggles here and there, but I think that's expected with the big minute forward of his stature. So I think the only real question on him is a bit of a mixed preseason with injury. Looks to be fit, looks to be playing this week, and then also do his minutes decrease under
Mm.
Madge? The reason I asked that is he played 54 or 55 minutes in all 3 Origin games last year, which
Yep.
is down from his kind of 60-minute average when he plays club football.
Mm.
And they've got Hetherington at lock, they've got Carrigan moving to prop. We saw Jensen break out last year, so there's a lot of minutes to kind of go in that middle rotation. So there is a chance his minutes get cut. But I do think that if they're serious about winning games, like they're better when Haas is on the field. He's,
Yep.
like I said, he's like Terrell May. He can play 70, 80
Mm.
minutes if you ask him to. So I think he's a pretty safe number 2. I don't think there's much downside in him, and he's going to give you 65 yet again.
Yeah, I'm with you on Haas there completely. We saw him last year when he came back from injury. He played like 70 minutes, scored something insane, and just looked
Yeah.
absolutely dominant. So he's a guy who, yeah, if you read him for 70 minutes every week, I mean, look, injuries might creep up, but he doesn't lose, ability through the game. So he absolutely pumps it. He's named to start in the trial. That's the big difference maker, right? So for me, he's not on my list right now because I'm a bit worried about the ankle surgery he had preseason. If he
Mhm.
plays well on the weekend, he jumps into my list 100%. And I think he's a fun pod to run over Isaiah Yo. So that's sort of where I sit on him. For my second spot, though, right now, I don't have Payne Haas. So I'm jumping on Corey Horsburgh. And I'm looking for value here. I've got a few other spots where I'm spending a bit more cash. So a few of these value middle forwards are guys I'm looking at. But for Corey Horsburgh, last year it was terrible. It happens with Ricky. We saw Joey Tarpanay go through the same thing a few years back. He still ran about a 1 ppm. And when we go back to 2023, the numbers were 55 points in 61-minute average. So if he's starting at lock, which I don't think is going to happen, he's an absolute must have. What's more likely is that he starts at prop. Now, the prop numbers, we've got 5 games to work from here. It's an average of 51 points in 48 minutes. So you've got a guy who's priced pretty cheap at 550K. And that 48 minutes, I would say, as a starting prop, is on the lower end of what we can expect for Horsburgh. So I'm pretty confident we get a 50 plus average out of him at a pretty good price.
Yeah, I'm not as hot on the big red as you are. I just think that look, I am. I do love how Ricky's come out and said he thinks Horsburgh will play Origin this year,
Yep.
just based on this preseason. That's obviously great if your coach is saying that. It sounds
Yep.
like whatever happened
The
between
coach
him and
speak.
Ricky last year is under the bridge, which is great. I just think that look, his 51 points in 48 minutes last year, I think a bit inflated by a game where he had a try. I think he played 2 games at prop 10 last year and it was about that, and one had a try in it. I just don't really see him getting more than 50 minutes if he's playing a lot, because they still got Josh Papali. So, even if Tarpanay and Horsburgh start, I think Papali's still playing big minutes off the bench. The thing is,
Yeah.
Gula leaving now does open up some minutes. But they've got Matty Nicholson there, who they've just got from England, and I know people are hyped on him if in case Hosking doesn't make the spot or if he's injured or whatnot. But Ricky's also said that what he loves about Nicholson is that he can play middle, play edge, everywhere. So
Mm.
like they're going to find minutes for him. I just think that if he was 50K cheaper, I'd love it. But he's just sitting outside my top 5 right now, based on
Mm.
I just don't know if he can give me that big value at that price.
Yeah, okay. See, I guess I'm a bit softer on him because I think of, Tom Flegler at the start of last year, who was a similar sort of proposition, at a bit of a cheaper price point with a bit less fantasy pedigree, but absolutely killed it to start the year. And I think Horsburgh's got that impact in him. I think he passes the eye test. I'm sort of backing the talent here, but I do get the stat case isn't all the way there. I still think we're going to see him average about 50 points this year. So that's my case on him.
I do see it. I also don't think that Morgan Smith is deserving of 70, 80 minutes. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Horsburgh could play 50 at prop and then 10 at lock. So maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I had him in my team for most of the preseason. I've just kind of fallen off him a bit now,
Yep.
but he could make his way back into my team pretty easily.
Yep. Okay, juicy. I mean, who have you got number 3, man?
Number 3, I've got Isaiah Yo. I think we're both in with
Same.
number 3. So yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
what can you say? This guy is so reliable. He plays 60 plus minutes every week. Even
Mm.
when there's Penrith rest a lot of players, but not really Yo. Like, I feel like Yo
Yep.
plays the round 26 or the round 27. He
Yeah.
backs up after Origin and plays big minutes. Like when he plays big minutes. I think there was a game he came off the bench last year and he still scored 65. It was something
Yeah.
ridiculous. But look, 66 average last year, 63 the year before, 60 in 2022. Fisher Harris is gone. He's still not that old. Like like Haas, he's kind of had a few
Mm.
good years. I know it feels like he's been around a long time, but he started pretty young. I think that with a lot of experience leaving Penrith, with, like I said, Fisher Harris, but also Luai, just leadership on the field, like he'll play 75, 80 minutes again.
Yep.
I think he's pretty much priced at his peak,
Yeah.
but the chances of him delivering close to that peak are pretty high,
Mm.
and he's probably the second best captaincy option in the league at the moment. So, like, look,
Yep.
if you can afford him and you want to stack your middles, like, get him in. I think I
Mm.
hyped him up last year and people didn't go onto it because he had that early buy with Nathan Cleary as well. But this year, like, honestly, I go for it.
Yeah, I will say strategically too, if you want to bet against Nathan Cleary, the only way you can do that this year is by picking Isaiah Yo and captaining him every week. That's basically the only sensible way to bet against Nathan Cleary. So if you want to anti-pod
Yeah.
Cleary, that's what you do. Otherwise, you've
Yeah.
absolutely covered it there.
And if Penrith gets slightly worse, it's probably better for Yo. Like
Well,
more
no,
tackles
Luai
in
in
the middle,
attack,
more
right?
defense. Yeah,
Yeah.
like more defense work in the middle, maybe more attack running through Yo with Luai
Yeah.
gone. And maybe more defense. If I know he plays in the middle, but if there's teams running ragged
Mm.
trying to defend young Talangi or Cole or Snyder on the edges who aren't defend. I mean, Snyder's a pretty good defender, but the other two are not so much. So if they're kind of stretching thin, you might have to clean up more in the middle. So could be
Yeah.
higher upside. I don't know. Maybe 65 isn't his peak.
Do you worry at all about the loss of Fisher Harris? So one thing that Fisher Harris does, and across the board, he does a lot of the things that don't reflect in fantasy. So line
Yeah.
speed, very strong contact, sort of anchors their defense in a different way to Yo. They're not going to have that now. So like Lindsay Smith, Liam Henry, these guys are good players, but they're not James Fisher Harris. Does that make Yo's job a bit harder? And does he maybe have to slide into, bringing that line speed and maybe missing a few more tackles, sort of rushing out a bit?
No, I don't think so. I think
Mm.
if you had said that, if this was Haas in this Penrith team and he
Yep.
lost a player like Fisher Harris, then I see that argument. But I
Yep.
think Yo's he just plays his game. Like he doesn't mismatch. He's just got elite technique.
Yeah.
He's big. He's lanky. Like he has long reach. Like he's very. I very rarely see him, arm
Yeah.
grab people.
Look, I'm trying to pick a
So
hole, right? There's no
yeah,
holes
yeah.
in this
Look,
guy. So this is all I can think of.
the only hole I see, maybe that argument is that they just, they've won 4 on the trot. Like maybe they kind of treat the regular season a bit more casually than they would normally, and then save him for the back end of the year, and he plays 60 to 65 minutes. But I think with Fisher Harris going, I think that's harder. So look, yeah, he'll be up there yet again.
I'll jump to my number 4 next, who has plenty of holes you can poke in him. So I'll let you do this because you don't have this guy. Tom Gilbert, 500K. So you talked about Horsburgh and wanting him 50K cheaper. Well, here is your Horsburgh 50K cheaper. So Tommy Gilbert priced at a 37. His average when he starts at lock is 47.5 in an average of 58 minutes. I think that's a pretty reasonable expectation for minutes. And when he plays second row, there's a bit of talk of that. I don't think it's going to happen. It's almost certainly not going to happen. But the second row average was only 40. So if he's playing second row, I'm not interested. But if he's starting lock like we expect, then I'm expecting that sort of mid to high 40s average for a guy who there is a bit of risk to. The injuries recently, I am a bit worried about those. But I do like the fact that they've gone Max Plath on the edge, because it means to me that that's going to be his primary role. And hopefully Gilbert can lock down the lock spot for decent minutes.
Yeah, I mean, like my counter arguments against that is Gilbert
Mm.
hasn't played in like 16 years. I feel like I think the
Yeah.
last time he played was when Parramatta won a comp. So it just feels like he's never been on the field. But I think the talent's there. Fantasy talent is so. It's not like an
Yep.
elite talent. It's not. It's not like a Munster coming back this year off injury
Yeah.
or
No.
injury affected season, etc. I think he's discounted, but I don't know if he's going straight into 58 minutes. I think the Plath at edge is arguably worse. Like I know you're high on that. My
Mm.
take is that Plath being on the edge actually means someone like Connolly Lemuelu comes in, plays big minutes,
Yeah.
and Plath goes to lock. So and then Gilbert plays 40, 50 minutes at least to start the season. I find it hard to see them giving him 60 minutes off the bat. So I
Yep.
think if you do go in, you have to be patient. Like if you
Mm.
start with him, I wouldn't expect a 48 average from week one. I think you'll build into those 48s and you'll make cash slowly, but he's
Yep.
still costing you 500K. So
Mm.
for me, it's too much of a slow burn and I'll be skipping him.
Yep.
So I don't know if you have anything to add there, but like that, on that basis, and my number 4 is actually your number 5. So it's a good segue. But my
Mhm.
number 4 is Kolomatangi, and obviously terrible news coming out of South's camp today that Murray's potentially ruptured his
Yep.
Achilles. I'm not sure if that was confirmed. I think he's still getting
I
that confirmed,
believe
but
it's confirmed at least a few
it's
months.
confirmed.
More.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Look, that's terrible news, and I'm sure it's a tough time
Mm.
being one Cam Murray and also being a
Yep.
part of the Rabbits club or their fan base. But fantasy is opportunity, and Colin Matangi, we saw what he could do at lock last year. He ran for about 250 meters a game. He's priced at 51. He averaged about 58.5 when he was playing lock big minutes, 70 minutes odd.
Mhm.
And in games where he's playing 60 plus minutes, which is if he kind of eats up all of Murray's minutes, then that average is about 67, which,
Yeah.
at
Huge.
the end of last
Huge.
year, him and Barnett were setting the middle forward scene alight.
Yep.
I think he'll be one of the most owned if
Yep.
he plays 13. The only problem is I know Souths have started with a lot of
Yep.
injuries this preseason already, and they were not healthy last year. So Colin Matangi had to eat up a lot of minutes in the middle. Now you've got Tallis Duncan, who's a year older, year wiser, who could soak up minutes in the middle. Jai Arrow, who was injured for most of last year, who can play lock.
Yep.
So there's a lot of options going on
Tola
here.
as well.
Yeah,
He was out
there's a
heaps
lot of
last
guys
year.
who could. Yeah, so I don't know if they're going to give him that big minutes.
Ewan Aitken comes in. Aitken's an 80-minute
Yeah,
guy sitting on the
that's
edge.
true. Aitken's
Does
100%
Schuster
playing 80
pop
minutes.
up?
Like Bennett. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of options.
Mm.
So um, that's my only knock on him. But I think he's named at lock. like there's a chance he's a top
Yeah.
three middle, and he's the only one that has that kind of upside at that discounted price,
Yep.
where he can be a 60 guy priced at 50.
Yeah.
So he's my number four.
The risk with him and the concern I have, and the reason I've dropped him down to 5, is the finish last year. So last 2 games of last year, scores in the 20s, had sub 100 meters in both those games. So I believe it was 95 meters exactly running the ball. That was down from, those 250-meter, 300-meter games. So I was a bit worried about that. I also look at him and I just don't know, like you said, if the minutes are going to be there. But at the same time, priced at 51, there's probably not that much risk that he goes below that. So you're rolling the dice on a guy where worst case scenario, you get what you paid for, and you get that dual position, which is fantastic. Best case scenario, you get a guy who pumps out a 60 plus average. Because the other side of this is if you take out those last 2 games, the average was like 67. So he
Yeah,
was absolutely unbelievable. And he passed the eye test too. It wasn't just like
he
he
looked
was
great.
scoring fantasy points. He
Yeah,
looked like one of the best locks in the comp. Like I'm seeing South's pages today posting, we're really sad about Cam Murray. It's good that we have Kaloa Matangi because he's such a capable backup, right? So
yeah.
even for non-fantasy heads, he makes sense in that position. He has lost a bit of weight this offseason too, so should be pretty durable. But we'll see how that impacts how he plays. If he is looking like that big minute starting lock, then I think you pretty much have to have him, and he's currently sitting on my side.
Yeah, seeing my side, the only other thing to note is I don't know if it really impacts him, but traditionally Bennett plays two 80-minute second rollers and then gives his lock kind of 50, 60, 70 minutes, like even
Yep.
with Corey Parker in his heyday, etc. So um, I don't know if that really helps with Colin Matangi. Like it's probably the minutes range you expect anyway, but you probably
Yep.
want him playing that 70, not that 50. So I don't know if that bit of intel was any use to anyone.
Yeah.
But that's your five. Look, and then my five, I was choosing between three Tigers players here. And that's Alex Seyfarth, who I think I'll slide into
Mm.
five. You've got Twal, who I could potentially argue for, and then
Mhm.
also Royce Hunt, who I could argue for as a cashy, because we don't have any real cashies on this list. So I'll start with the guy. I think Alex Seyfarth. Look, I wasn't hot on him until this week, until they named that kind of full strength trial team. I think he averaged about 48 when he plays 70 plus minutes at second row.
Yep.
He's priced at 450 odd, I believe. So he's not priced that highly. The only question for him is the minutes.
Mm.
Now, I looked at their bench composition for the first trial and this trial, and I don't think he's getting less than 70, 80 minutes. Like I
Wow.
just don't really see it. Like they've lost Bateman and Papali this year. So I think there's a lot of minutes eat up. They just extended him. I know they're big on him. Like Benji's hyped him up. I think he's getting the big minutes. I think he's finally going to break out this year.
Mm.
I didn't love him till about 12 hours ago, but now I think I'm on him. I
You're
think,
all in.
look, at his price, yeah, look, I don't, I'm not all in because he's still number five, not number
Yep.
one. But I think mid cash cows are very limited this year.
Mm.
Like a lot of people are on Tom and Moan. He's not named there.
Yep.
And Royce Hunt is the other cashy who I just
Mm.
mentioned. I think, look, Clemmer leaving helps him, but with Twal named at lock originally, Bird saying he's playing in the middle, Pole and May, like, these are all big minute middle guys.
Yep.
Royce Hunt needs 30 plus minutes. He could
Mm.
still play only 25. So that's why I'll go with Seyfarth in the middle. And I briefly raised Twal. The reason I raised Twal is if he does start at lock and Jack Bird comes to the bench, like we've seen his fantasy pedigree, he scores a lot of points when he gets
Mm.
big minutes. I don't know if he gets big minutes if he shares with Bird, but I will watch this preseason game pretty quickly. If it looks like they're going to give 12 the 60, 70-minute lock roll, I could potentially roll the dice with him.
Yeah, look, you may. I can't disagree with any of the points you're making, but the bit I worry about is guys just absolutely screwing me over, and
Yeah,
hitting some bad scores, not making cash, and then getting dropped from their teams. So
that's
Alex
12 to a
Seyfarth,
T.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
12, yeah, he's a
Well,
PPM.
that's Seyfarth too, yeah.
Yeah, but Seyfarth in particular, right? Like I have made a fantasy career on betting against Alex Seyfarth, and it has not let me down so
It's
far.
a good career. It's a good
Yeah.
career.
Every time I just sort of look at it and go, oh, look, last year he was starting at lock, round one, everyone's like, oh, yeah, lock, he averages this, that, everything else. He played
Yeah,
15 minutes, got hooked, and I think he played 10 minutes at the end and scored, under 20
yeah.
points, and then was on the bench the following week. So I'm not super excited. I feel more confident this year than I have in previous years because his only competition really is like Ruben Porter Or maybe you can make a case for Jack Bird. That's probably something to watch for the trials this week. Does Jack Bird come on the edge? If he does, that's a big risk to Seyfarth, but I think he'll come on in the middle. So for Seyfarth, right now he's not on my team, but if I had a hole in my team, I mean, there's Seyfarth and there's Tom Gilbert, right? So they both have big questions. They're both around a similar price point. Gilbert's an ex-Origin player who's a guy that they love having. Seyfarth is kind of that Michael Bradbury. What's his name? Stephen Bradbury? Stephen
Stephen
Bradbury.
Bradbury,
Yeah, where he
last
sort of
man
skated
standing.
through, Bateman, Papali'i, all these other guys have sort of hopped out and
Yeah.
he's just slid into that spot. So I rather bet on the talent early this year. That's what I learned from last year. So personally, I'm not on, but I totally understand the case you're making.
Yeah, I don't love it. Like this one could bite me on the bum for sure.
He's your number
It's kind of
five, man. You're taking a shot.
yeah. Look, I mean, if they didn't extend him for 2 years in the
Mm.
preseason, I would have thought, nah, hell no, I ain't
Yeah,
doing it.
okay.
But they clearly back him a little bit, or
Maybe
maybe they're
he's
just
cheap.
desperate.
Maybe he's
Yeah,
really
maybe they got
cheap.
no one. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, maybe it was a very value pick,
Yeah.
and no one was available in free
Well,
agency.
they tried spending money on back rows before with Bateman and Papali'i. They're
True,
going the other way now.
true.
It's going,
Yeah, going
boom
cash
bust.
cows now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cash cow, edge back row,
yeah,
which is not the
yeah,
strategy I'm running this year. So, I mean, let's talk about our middle forwards and who we've got. So for me, Terrell May was my first locked in. Connor
yeah.
Watson, who we talked about in the hooker video, he's currently sitting in my middles. And then Corey Horsburgh in the starting side as well. And then I've made space for Kaloa Matangi as it stands. So I've gone very heavy on middle forwards. Also, Royce Hunt is sitting in my emergencies just as a bit of a placeholder right now, but I'm not fully locked in on him. He's more just there because he's cheap.
Yeah, I'm going to go on similar for you. Similar to you, I think I actually cleared my team before this video, so the
Yep.
only person who's earned a spot in my team is Terrell May right now. Watson as well, but Watson
Yep.
doesn't count because he's going to go into my hooker spot. But it's Terrell May. I want to squeeze in Haas.
Yep.
I had Yo in there, but now I think I'll drop Yo for Kolomatangi.
Yep.
And then I think Seyfarth will go onto my bench, or yeah, he should get dual position. So
Yeah.
let's see how that goes.
Yoda Kolomatangi is massive too. That's 170K, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of cash. And if you can average, 60 plus Kolomatangi, then you're making a good move there. All right, cool. Well, that's mids. I mean, is there anyone else you want to touch on? Should we talk about Joe Offahengawi again, or
I mean, the only other
Attacking
one that
Bandit?
comes to mind is look, we can talk about like a million players, but
Yeah.
maybe I mean I know you don't love it, but one that kind of piques my interest is Jack DeBellin, named at lock.
Ooh.
I know Eisenhuth's not in the team this week, but if he plays 13, I mean they've recruited like a million middles, so probably not. It's probably a stupid idea. But I just think back to the heydays of when Jack DeBellin's playing 65, 70 minutes in the middle. He's
Yeah.
arguably the best middle in the game. Like he's had phases where he's been 60 plus. He just gets injured and he doesn't come back to the role. Look, it's not going to happen, so don't do it. But just raise a
Yeah.
name. Why not?
He was upsetting to own last year. So 637K, priced at a 48. I think he's too much of a pseudo gun. Like guys like
Yeah.
him, we could talk about James Fisher Harris as well. He's about a
Yep.
PPM guy, potentially makes a bit of a leap this year. 600K is a pretty good price for him. So I would be pretty surprised if his first month of footy isn't, green plus dollars every single week. I think he'll
Yeah.
go up in cash. I just don't think it's going to be enough to justify buying him over some of these other guys.
Yeah. Oh, actually, the other name, I'm surprised you didn't bring up. You were kind of hot on him earlier in the preseason,
Yep.
but Stefano, you are off him now?
Yep. Stefano, I am a big fan of longer term, but I think he'll start. I mean, he was good in that trial game. So he had about 110 meters, 4 tackle breaks. I think it was 24 tackles, no misses. So he looked good, but I just think he'll start a bit slow. They've got a bunch of guys who eat up minutes. He's adjusting to the Melbourne system. He'll probably have a few moments where maybe he doesn't cover in defense the way Melbourne expect, and he'll get hooked. Like I could just see a few of those sort of popping up. But as he grows into the role, he'll be a guy that we're probably looking at buying sort of round 4, round 5, round 6 in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with that call. The last one I want to mention is coming out of left field recently, but Jack Williams at Parramatta, named in the leadership group.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that means anything, but named to start this week as well. In 4 games starting at lock last year, where he averaged 62 minutes, he averaged 53. So I don't know if it's him or Offa who gets that RCG role.
It's pretty
But
good though.
look, yeah, I mean, if he plays 55 minutes, 60 minutes at prop,
Yeah.
which apparently he is training the house down. And, like I said, named in the
Yep.
leadership group. So maybe, look, might be he's leading the bench. But one to think about, one to watch this week. I'm not saying
Yeah.
he's a lock. He's not in my top 5, probably not even in my top 10, but he's slowly rising over, from
Mm.
team list today.
Not a bad specky as the 17th pick in a draft league. I don't mind
Mm.
that. It's a tough one with Parramatta with, Ryan
Yeah,
Madison,
so
Sean
much. Yeah,
Lane. Like, there's so many dudes.
100%.
But yeah, they're good shouts. Obviously, there's a bunch of teams with Cam Murray. You're going to have to move him out of your team, is a big one. And then, I mean, other middle forwards, we'll talk about Hopgood more in the Edge video, but he's one we're excited about too. Otherwise, I think that's me pretty much covered.
Yeah, good sesh.
Awesome, man. Thank you for jumping on. Everyone, jump on to the next video now. So we've done hookers already. We're moving to Edge forwards next. We're covering it all. Pick from these groups, and you should do all right in fantasy this year. Cheers, Briz.